A magistrate in Carbon County says there's enough evidence to send Luis Sierra to trial for the 1976 murder of then 15-year-old Evelyn Colon.
Today is going to be justice for the Colon family because of what he did.
On December 20, 1976, beneath a bridge along Interstate 80 in Carbon County, Pennsylvania, a teenage boy made a discovery that would haunt investigators for nearly half a century. 3 suitcases, discarded like trash along the frozen banks of the Lehigh River. Inside those weathered cases lay the brutally dismembered remains of a young woman and her full-term female fetus. Victims of unspeakable violence, their identities seemingly erased from existence. For 44 years, she would be known only as Beth Doe. Her real name, her story, her life before death, all lost to time. The young mother-to-be, just weeks away from giving birth, had been strangled, shot, dismembered, and packed away, as if someone believed they could make her disappear forever. But some secrets refused to stay buried. Today, we're exploring one of forensic genealogy's most remarkable cold case breakthroughs. The identification of Beth Doe as 15-year-old Evelyn Colon, and the arrest of the man who allegedly silenced her and her unborn daughter over 4 decades ago. This is a story of justice delayed but not denied, of a family who never stopped wondering what happened to their beloved Evelyn, and of investigators who refused to let a young mother and her child be forgotten. Her life was cut tragically short, but her story is finally being told. Evelyn Colon was born on April 17, 1961 in Jersey City, New Jersey. The daughter of Puerto Rican immigrants, she grew up in a close-knit household with her parents Oralia and Louis and her 4 siblings. Family photos show a smiling girl with bright eyes and a distinctive mole on her right cheek, a feature that would later help identify her remains. By all accounts, the Colon family was tight-knit, working class, and protective of their children. Evelyn was particularly close with her sister Migdalia, who would later recall her as a joyful person, always full of life. Like many teenage girls, Evelyn had dreams and hopes, none of which included becoming a tragic victim in a decades-long mystery. In the mid-1970s, the Colon family's next-door neighbor included a young man named Luis Sierra. At 19, he was 4 years older than Evelyn, an age gap that might seem small for adults but was big for a 15-year-old girl. The two began dating, and what started as teenage romance quickly grew into something more serious and concerning. By late 1976, Evelyn was 9 months pregnant with Sierra's child. Despite her young age, her parents reluctantly supported the couple moving into their own apartment, believing this would provide stability for their coming grandchild. But the warning signs were already there. According to Migdalia, Sierra showed controlling behavior from the start. He would reportedly lock Evelyn in their apartment, cutting her off from family and friends. Phone calls became her main way to stay in touch with loved ones. In the most chilling details, Evelyn had told her mother something that would haunt the family for decades. "If something happens to me," she told Oralia, "Louis would be responsible." Words that now seem less like teenage drama and more like a warning of the horror to come. By mid-December 1976, Evelyn was in the final weeks of her pregnancy. Her due date was quickly approaching, and like many expecting mothers, she wasn't feeling her best. One afternoon, she called her mother, Oralia. At that moment, her voice was weak. "Mom, I'm not feeling well," she said. "Could you bring me some soup?" It was a simple request, a daughter reaching out to her mother for comfort. Oralia, concerned for her pregnant daughter, agreed immediately. But when Oralia arrived at the apartment, she found something deeply troubling. The door was unlocked, the rooms were empty, Evelyn and Louis were gone. Neighbors told Oralia that the young couple had suddenly moved out, no forwarding address, no goodbye, no explanation. The family was confused and worried, but in January 1977, a ray of hope arrived in their mailbox. A letter, postmarked from Connecticut, written in Spanish. The letter claimed Evelyn had given birth to a healthy baby boy named Luis Sierra Jr. and that she was doing well. It said she would reach out if she needed anything. The Colon family, though concerned by the sudden move, believed the letter. Their Evelyn was safe. She was a new mother starting her own life. When they tried to report her missing years later, police turned them away because of that letter. Tragically, both Oralia and Luis Colon would eventually pass away, never knowing what happened to their daughter. They died still believing Evelyn was somewhere out there raising her son. They never learned the horrifying truth, that by the time that letter arrived, Evelyn and her unborn daughter were already dead, their remains discovered in those 3 suitcases along the Lehigh River. And that letter, it wasn't from Evelyn at all. December 20, 1976. A cold winter day in Carbon County, Pennsylvania. The Lehigh River flows beneath a bridge carrying Interstate 80, its banks partially frozen in the winter chill. A teenage boy explores the area beneath the bridge, perhaps looking for adventure or simply passing time. What he finds will change his life forever. 3 suitcases lie discarded near the riverbank, as if someone had hurriedly tossed them from the bridge above. 2 of the cases have broken open from the impact. What spills out is anyone's worst nightmare. Inside are the dismembered remains of a young woman and her nearly full-term female fetus. The 3rd suitcase contains more body parts. The cases themselves have been spray-painted black, wrapped in newspaper, and bound with a chenille bedspread. Pennsylvania State Police quickly take over the scene. The medical examiner's findings pointed towards something truly disturbing. The victim had been strangled, shot in the neck after death, and carefully dismembered with a serrated blade. Her head, ears, nose, and breasts had been severed. The unborn baby girl had been removed from her body after death. The autopsy estimates that death occurred within 24 hours of discovery, though investigators note that the cold weather may have preserved the remains longer. The brutality of the crime shocks the nation. News outlets across the country report on the grisly discovery. The young victim's pregnancy makes the crime all the more heinous in the public eye, but despite the media attention, no one comes forward to identify her. With no name, no identity, and no one to claim her, authorities designate her Beth Doe, a placeholder name for a woman whose real identity seems to have vanished as completely as her life. What investigators don't know is that her family isn't looking for her. They believe she's alive and well, raising a baby boy in Connecticut. For investigators, Beth Doe quickly became a frustrating puzzle. Her fingerprints yielded no matches in FBI databases. Early police sketches generated few leads. Every promising tip led nowhere. By 1983, with no breakthroughs in sight, Beth Doe was laid to rest in a cemetery in Weatherly, Pennsylvania. Her grave marker didn't bear a name, just another painful reminder that somewhere a family was missing a daughter they didn't even know was gone. But sometimes such cold cases are never truly forgotten. In 2007, investigators dug up Beth Doe's remains, hoping that advances in forensic science might finally give her back her name. They collected DNA samples and commissioned new facial reconstructions from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. The latest reconstruction, completed in 2015, offered the most accurate depiction yet of what Beth Doe might have looked like in life. Scientists also conducted isotope analysis of her remains, which suggested she was born in Central or Western Europe and had immigrated to America as a child. A detail that would later prove misleading, as her Puerto Rican heritage wasn't properly interpreted from the findings. False leads continued to plague the investigation. In 2019, a theory emerged linking Beth Doe to a runaway foster child named Madeline Maggie Cruz. Investigators followed this lead eagerly, only to discover Cruz was alive and well. With each passing year, the case grew colder. The file on Beth Doe gathered dust as investigators moved on to more solvable cases. The nameless young mother and her unborn child seemed destined to remain among the thousands of unidentified remains across America, people without names, stories without endings. But science was about to change everything. 2020 marked a turning point for cold cases across America. The emerging field of genetic genealogy, the same technology that had identified the Golden State Killer 2 years earlier, was transforming unsolved cases across the nation. For Beth Doe, this scientific breakthrough would finally end decades of secrecy. Investigators sent a femur sample to a specialized lab in Texas. The DNA profile was then uploaded to a genealogy database where it waited for a potential match. The wait wasn't long. The system found a match to a living relative, Evelyn Colon Jr., Evelyn's nephew, who had uploaded his own DNA to the database simply to learn about his family history. He never imagined it would help solve a murder. His genetic connection led police to his father, Evelyn Colon Sr., Evelyn's brother. When investigators contacted him, his response was immediate. "I have a missing sister from 1976. The pieces quickly fell into place. Lewis Sr. described Evelyn's identifying marks, a mole on her right cheek and a distinctive scar on her leg. Both matched Beth Doe perfectly. Family photos of Evelyn showed striking similarities to the facial reconstructions created over the years. For the Colon family, the news was devastating yet provided long-awaited answers. Evelyn hadn't abandoned them. She hadn't started a new life. She had been cruelly taken from them, her identity concealed for nearly half a century. With Evelyn finally identified, investigators turned their attention to Luis Sierra, her boyfriend at the time of her disappearance. Now in his 60s and living in Ozone Park, New York, Sierra had built a life while Evelyn lay in an unmarked grave. In March 2021, Pennsylvania State Police knocked on his door. After 44 years, they were about to ask him some very difficult questions about a pregnant 15-year-old girl who vanished just before Christmas 1976. When confronted at his home, Luis Sierra's story immediately began to unravel. At first, he denied even knowing Evelyn Colon. When pressed, he admitted to dating her, but claimed she had simply left after an argument. He couldn't explain the mysterious letter from Connecticut, nor could he account for his complete lack of effort to find her or their unborn child. On March 31, 2021, Pennsylvania State Police formally identified Beth Doe as 15-year-old Evelyn Colon and arrested Luis Sierra for her murder. At 63 years old, Sierra was taken into custody, 44 years after allegedly taking Evelyn's life. Sierra was extradited from New York to Pennsylvania, charged with criminal homicide and held without bail in Carbon County Prison. A preliminary hearing in April 2021 found sufficient evidence to proceed to trial. By June 2022, Sierra's defense was attempting to suppress his 2021 police interview, claiming he wasn't properly given his Miranda rights. For the Colon family, the arrest brought both grief and relief. Led by Evelyn's niece, Miriam Colon Veltman, the family raised funds to visit Evelyn's gravesite, now finally marked with her real name after decades of anonymity. They also gave a name to the unborn child who never had a chance at life, Emily Grace Colon. As of March 2025, Sierra awaits trial. The Pennsylvania State Police and Carbon County District Attorney continue building their case, supported by tips from the public. For Evelyn Colon, justice may finally be within reach. Though she was known as Beth Doe for 44 years, she will now be remembered by her true name and by the family who never stopped wondering what happened to their beloved Evelyn. 3 black suitcases, a frozen riverbank, a 44-year mystery finally unraveling. The story of Evelyn Colon reminds us that time doesn't erase evidence. It simply waits for science to catch up. As Luis Sierra awaits his day in court, one question lingers in the cold Pennsylvania air. Will justice finally come for the teenage girl once known only as Beth Doe? Remember to subscribe and hit the notification bell to uncover the next mysterious case on our channel, because some secrets refuse to stay buried.